So you're thinking about Odoo ERP, but maybe your head's spinning a little when you look at the potential costs. You are not alone. So let's cut right through all that noise and give you a clear, no-nonsense breakdown of what an Odoo implementation really costs so you can build a budget that actually makes sense. All right, this is the question, right? Is what everybody wants to know. And look, the answer isn't just one simple number, but don't worry, we are absolutely going to get you as close as possible by breaking it all down. Okay, so let's get right to it. Here are the ballpark numbers we're talking about. If you're a small business, maybe just a handful of users, you're probably looking in the $5,000 to $20,000 range. For a medium-sized company, that number jumps up, somewhere between 20 and 100,000. And for the big players, the large enterprises, you're starting at 100 grand and going up from there. Think of these as your starting point, your frame of reference. So you might be wondering, where do these numbers even come from? Well, it's not just a random guess. These ranges are really shaped by a few key things: how many people will be using it, which specific Odoo apps or modules you actually need, and, this is a big one, how much you need to bend the software to fit your unique business processes. And this also kind of gives you an idea of the timeline involved. That lower price tag for a small business, that often lines up with a pretty quick pilot project, maybe 4 to 8 weeks. But that hefty six-figure investment for a large enterprise, well, that's for a much more involved rollout that could easily take a year and a half or even longer to get fully implemented. Okay, so let's peel back the layers on that total cost. We're going to break it down into the 5 big pieces so you know exactly where every single dollar is going. First up, you've got licensing. This is kind of your ticket to the game, and it's your first big choice. You can go with the free open source community edition, which is great, or you can opt for the paid enterprise edition. Enterprise gets you a lot more features and official support, and it's usually a per user per month deal, so it's a recurring cost that grows as your team grows. All right, next up, customization. And listen, this is where the budget can really, it can really stretch. Simple tweaks, like adding a new report or an extra field on a form, that's pretty straightforward. But if you're talking about building whole new features from scratch or integrating with some complex external system, well, those development hours can add up fast. Then you've got data migration, basically moving all your old stuff into the shiny new system. And here's the absolute truth about this. If your data is clean, organized, and all in one place, moving it is pretty cheap and easy. But if it's a mess spread across multiple old spreadsheets and databases, that's going to require a ton of manual cleanup, and that costs serious time and money. You also have to figure out where your Odoo is going to live. Cloud hosting is kind of the hands-off option. A provider handles all the servers and maintenance for a predictable monthly fee. On-premise, that's where you're the captain of the ship. You buy the hardware, your IT team manages everything. It's a classic trade-off, really. Do you want predictable monthly payments, or do you want total control? And last but absolutely not least, please do not forget about training and support. This is not a nice to have, it's your insurance policy for success. You've got a budget for the initial training to get your team up and running, plus some kind of ongoing support plan for when things go wrong, for bug fixes, and for future upgrades. Okay, so we've got the main ingredients. Now let's talk about the things that can really turn the heat up or down on that final price tag. Think of these as the dimmer switches for your budget. No surprise here, the biggest driver is just how many people are going to be using the system. But as you can see, it's not just about buying more licenses. A larger team requires more complex training, you'll need more rigid approval workflows, and you'll have to do way more testing. All of that adds to the project's bottom line. But it's not just about the headcount. There are a few other big levers that can really move the needle on your budget. Adding complex modules like manufacturing or e-commerce is a big one. The level of customization we talked about, who you choose as your implementation partner, their experience versus their hourly rate, that's a huge decision. And of course, the complexity of your data. Okay, knowing all of this, how do you actually plan for it? How do you avoid those nasty surprises that blow up your budget? Let's get into some real pro-level advice here. Here's a little secret from the pros. Don't try to do everything at once. Budget in phases. Set aside maybe 15 to 25% of your total budget for an initial discovery and a small pilot project. This lets you test things out and prove the concept works before you commit the real money, the other 75%, to the full-scale rollout. And if you want to dodge those hidden costs, you gotta get out in front of them. Seriously, audit your data before you start. In your contract, be crystal clear about what is not included to prevent that dreaded scope creep. and set up formal, clear rules for things like testing and change requests so there are absolutely no surprises later on.
And here it is, maybe the most important piece of budgeting advice I can give you for any big project. Always, always have a contingency fund. Set aside an extra 10 to 15% of your total project cost just for the unexpected. Because trust me, something will go wrong. And this buffer is what keeps a small problem from derailing the entire project.
Okay, last section. Let's talk about the big why. How do you prove to your boss, to your board, that this whole thing is worth the money? Well, it all comes down to calculating your return on investment, or ROI. And look, the ROI here isn't just about shaving a few pennies off your expenses. The real return comes from fundamentally changing how your business runs. It's about a fundamental shift, processing things faster, freeing up cash because you're not sitting on tons of inventory, and improving quality by getting rid of all those costly manual errors. That's what gives you a real competitive edge. And you can actually translate all those good feelings into hard numbers. First, you have the payback period. Super simple. How long till you make your money back? In this example, you spend 120 grand, you save 40 grand a year, your payback is 3 years. Easy. And then there's the total cost of ownership, or TCO, which gives you the full financial picture over the long haul, not just that initial price. And the absolute key to making this work is to ground your business case in reality. Don't just make up numbers. First, measure your current problems with actual data. How long does this process take right now? Then, when you estimate your future gains, be conservative. Under-promise and over-deliver. That's how you build a credible case for the investment. So there you have it. We've pulled back the curtain on Odoo ERP costs. You know the components, you know the biggest cost drivers, and you know how to calculate the potential return. So now the only question left is your business ready to make that investment in its future? Because with the right plan, it's an investment that can pay off for years and years to come.